everybody's quiet. Okay. This is ruins of Ephesus near the library.
That was actually a shrine that was on the road on the way down to the library.
Mm-hmm.
I did write a report on that in college.
Oh, really?
And so they said this may be very much like you would have expected to see with the shrine to an unknown God,
Mm-hmm.
as Paul was arguing with the Athenians.
Mm-hmm. Does somebody know? I didn't know. I never been. This gospel is not only evangelistic, but it is also designed to build believers in their faith and understanding of spiritual principles. I don't know if I would call John's gospel evangelistic in this day and age. What do you think? Would you give to some of your friends the Gospel of John, hoping that by reading it they'll become Christians? Honest answer.
Yeah.
If yes, why? And if not, why?
Well, you've got John 3:16 in it. Why is that there?
Well, what does that say?
Isn't that like the key evangelistic verse that everybody uses?
Well, if I use the Roman rule, they'll give them the Romans.
Yeah, but that's not one of the Gospels, though, is it?
Okay.
I thought we were choosing a Gospel.
Well, yeah, okay.
I mean, I think
Let's stick to it.
you've got... Doesn't it kick off with them turning the water into wine? Well, first off, chapter 1 is the best account or description of his deity.
But do you think that today's person would actually understand what it says?
No.
Not about today's person.
If they don't know what the First Amendment of the United States Constitution is, and they know all the family members of Bart Simpson's cartoon, do you think they would?
Put into cartoon form. Read it slowly. Well, I think, yeah, I think John chapter 1 is just a brilliant, really clear statement that Jesus is God, which is like all cults and misunderstandings of Christianity come from that issue. You know, is Jesus God or not? And people always say, oh, he never claimed to be God, that type of thing. Then you've got, the first miracle, which is a pretty cool one. And then you've got him talking to Nicodemus.
Very favorite among alcoholics. Jesus turned water into wine.
You gotta explain it away. Then you've got him talking to the woman at the well, chapter 4. That's a nice one there. It's the only gospel where it tells the story of him washing the disciples' feet. I think it appeals more to the Eastern mind.
The Eastern mind?
Yeah, Eastern way of thinking. Yeah, maybe. But I think it's even wrong with it for evangelism.
What is that one?
I don't really know what it means. Just read it somewhere.
Alright, so I'll buy that. Arlene was next, then Roland, then Craig.
I actually wouldn't use it.
Why not?
I'm actually a fairly new Christian, and thinking back in that time, I think John's actually the hardest gospel to understand if you don't already have a thought or an idea of him being God.
Yeah.
So I find it actually very difficult to understand, and without the theological understanding already there. So I would probably, for my friends that are either running the opposite direction or really maybe just kind of looking, I'd probably use Luke, because it's much more for this day and age. Everybody wants just the facts, man. You know, they want to know. They want it, and they want to know in a specific fashion. They want to have it proven to them. They're very cynical. This was a physician wrote this. It's very well researched. It's very, it's very easy. It's more easy to understand, and it's has a nice timeline to it. So I would probably use Luke, and really, after they've got an idea, a little bit of an idea of theology, or they're starting to believe, then I'd hit them with John and say, look, this is what it's all
And
about,
then,
kind of thing.
Then they might become Jehovah's Witnesses. That's
You know,
too difficult.
But yeah, I think John is definitely harder to read, harder to understand unless you already have a theological understanding or background.
I understand where you're coming from. Roland?
I would
Okay.
give it to him, and the reason is, most people I've spoken to, they have a sense of who Jesus was as man, as a lot of them speak about, well, in my family, there's Christians in my family, or I've been to Sunday school when I was young, and I think the historical Jesus, there's a lot of information out there they might know, but the deity, that's the important aspect of it, and John 20:31 sums it all up. But these have been written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in His name. And I believe by them reading that, they will believe. It depends on their heart. But I think John sums it up correctly.
I think within this environment in the United States, where a lot of people have some familiarity with Jesus or Christianity, that would be probably a
You
good
gauge,
enough
I mean,
approach.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a trade-off.
When we move to Africa, into a culture of
Forget it. I wouldn't even let them read it. Yeah.
or a culture where betraying somebody is actually an honorable act.
Yeah.
That would be quite difficult probably to use. Yeah, I just for this environment, or for background of some of the people that have been growing in Christian families, or at least raised in a country that was supposedly Christian, or held up to some Christian ideas. Yeah, I would say I would agree with that idea. Craig?
I wouldn't give them any book of the Bible, just because if you look at the American culture, we have such short attention spans. You know, you can hand a Bible, and are you ever gonna read it?
According to peanuts? Or?
No, I'm just saying, are you ever gonna read it? I mean, how many people have actually read a pamphlet that they've got at school? And we're talking about a pamphlet, not a book of the Bible, but a pamphlet. How many people have actually read that? How many people in our culture would? That's why they made Lord of the Rings. That's why they're making all these awesome movies, Chronicles of Narnia, because nobody reads those books anymore. The only way you get it is through a movie or something like that. So I would probably give them The Passion or something like that, and they'd be like, what did you think? Question them on that, and then take them into that. But that would give them an interesting view of Jesus, which is probably closer than anything other than the Bible's ever gotten, and then answer their questions with that. And if that sparks their interest, then that might spark them to read. But I don't think anybody would actually physically read the whole Gospel of John. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Mark, just because it is kind of shotgun to your face, bam, 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 bam. So there's enough stuff going on, and it's short, it's the shortest one, to where it could probably keep their attention.
It's interesting, in the communist China, when communists were trying to propagate the idea of communist ideology among the Chinese people, who were mainly illiterate, they started with comic books, where it was mainly pictures, very little wording, but mainly pictures. And I think Wycliffe Bible Society, or Wycliffe Translators, also came up with a version of the Bible that was mainly like comic books. I've seen them in German, and I've seen them in English and in Russian, written in the form of comic books. And the pictures there are not likely designed for children. They're designed for the adults, with either shorter attention span, or people who like movies who are visually oriented. I personally prefer visually oriented information since I was a kid. I don't like to read lengthy books without pictures or illustrations or anything like that. Just my personal opinion. I'm visually oriented more than abstract there. that's probably why in the modern day world you will find cliff notes on the Bible, or Bible according to Bart Simpson, or the Peanut version of the Bible, or Bible according to Peanuts, or some of the other variations of popular culture. Another variant is Reel to Reel, where you actually discuss popular movies and you will seek out theological ideas out of the popular movies or ideas about life for the young people. It's not the best tool to use, but that's probably the reason why we're getting down to the point, because people don't want to read. They don't want to learn. They don't want to read. They don't want to do anything. And probably, maybe in a few years, you'll see a video game, you know, maybe about biblical knowledge. Jesus striking people down or raising from the dead or whatever. Huh?
I think that's already made.
That's already made?
There's a video game out there, it's a Bible video game.
What's the name of that game?
I can't think of it off the top of my head, I just heard about it in the past month or so, being advertised, you know. I can't think of the name of it though.
I know it's for the PlayStation. One of my college
Yeah.
students has it.
Yeah,
Wow, it's out already?
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
yeah, it is.
And I think I saw a TV or news broadcast where they said that Christian companies are developing more and more action games to appeal to the action-oriented audience and to teenagers, because teenagers would most likely spend 2 hours playing Bible video game if it's interesting enough and challenging, than spend it reading the Bible. Yeah. So other ideas. Why would you or would not recommend Gospel of John?
Well, I think just listening to comments, it just depends on the person you're talking to. But for me, in every topic, there's a definition. So everyone's gonna ask, well, who was Jesus? And I think John 1:1 gives us that. Now, how far do you have to go to expound on that to get them to understand is another issue, but there's your definition of who we say he is. That's why I would start with John. You can open up to John beyond the Old Testament and start right there as an introduction.
Sure.
And I think Hebrew Bible, that's where they start. John 1:1, as far as Scripture is concerned. So I would definitely start at John 1:1. Who is Jesus?
For my Greek students,
I was gonna say,
former
I would
Greek
just
students,
teach them Greek and hand them the.
John.
It's so crazy.
First John is given on the advanced level of Greek, which means after basics, intermediate, on advanced level of Greek, because of sophistication of his Greek. John's grammar is the most difficult Greek grammar in the whole New Testament. The one that is almost as difficult is Book of Hebrews. But John is the most difficult. So linguistically, theologically, and literary, it's the most challenging book for the Greeks. And again, I would probably stick with Roland's approach. You have to know who you're talking to before you would select which gospel you're going to hit them with. Might be a hardcover with metal edges, or soft cover. Yes.
I just want to add something there. I see where the conversation is going. I've been doing this for a while, helping people find the Lord. Number one, the Holy Spirit is what moves people to have a desire. It says it in John 4:35-36. The fields are white with harvest. They are white with harvest, and whatever you use to attract an individual, it's still inspired by the Holy Spirit. And when you start, the whole purpose of the Great Commission was to be one-on-one. It wasn't to put a video on a screen, which, no, I'm not saying it's wrong.